value for money. The bang for buck, if you want to think about it in that way. And so the possibilities are there now, looking at who will be the persons who will help to deliver this and to ensure that it is sustained. So is this a role for government? Does the private sector assist? Is this something that should sit in the private sector alone? And I think what you're hearing are the possibilities of things like an executive agency being established in some countries within the government system, but with strong participation from the private sector. And I think also looking at the possibility of the role, who takes responsibility, the sustainability that was talked about earlier.
Yes.
Who takes responsibility for this?
My concern, though, you already have an impact assessment, because
Yes.
you have had a couple of years of application in a number of islands. Would you be recommending to governments regionally a process in terms of implementation and a strategy in terms of the framework for administration? Or are you going to allow each territory to decide how to put it in place? Because I think there's a little danger there.
Yeah, I think there are a number of things that we have to do.
Yes.
I think we have to first agree that this initiative is so crucial and has to be seen as becoming a permanent part of our interventions in education.
Right. Yes.
That's the first thing.
Yes.
And secondly, we need to now look at how we resource this initiative and what are the best modalities for getting the private sector and the governments to participate. The NGOs have been involved in this game for a fair amount of time, and they have experience, and I think the willingness is there.
Yes, yes. I don't think we have seen before a program that has such a wide range of positive impacts, impacting children, impacting youth, impacting parents, impacting communities, producing better results in terms of the quality of persons who will enter into our workforce, and also the quality of persons that we will have in terms of administration for national development. And so it seems that we must find a way to have sustainability for the Roving Caregivers Program. We're going to be talking in our next segment about the funding that will be required to have this happen, and what are some of the models that we are looking at in order to fund this. We'll be right back.
Taking care can be so easy. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Whether you're family, friend, or neighbor, come on, take a stand. A hug, a smile, a patience, or sometimes just to hold our hand.
A message from the Caribbean Child Support Initiative, a program of CARICAD with support from the Bernard Bandler Foundation.
Take good care of the children.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. Got it? Taking care of us can be so easy.
Take good care of the children.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion on the Roving Caregiver Program, a program that has proven impact on child care, child development, parenting education, nutrition, long-term educational impact, as well as crime, delinquency, and a number of other socioeconomic factors, which as a region, the Caribbean really cannot ignore. We're looking now at issues related to sustainability, and of course in that context the issue of continuing funding comes up, as the primary financier of the Roving Caregiver Program, the Bernard Bandler Foundation, will not be sustaining this program beyond the year 2011. We've spoken a little bit about the importance of governments being involved in this program, and already they are. But we now need to look at how do we access continuing funds. It seems that government will be a primary issue, but also how do we include the public sector, private sector, civil society organizations. Mr. Gregory DeGans is Managing Director of the National Bank of Dominica, and he is very passionate about supporting the Roving Caregivers Program.
We as business people, we have a responsibility to the community and the country in which we operate, where we make our profits. It is just not the government and these fair ladies who seem to be the one pushing the cause and begging everybody globally. Where is our commitment as a private sector to ensure that we have a better quality of life for our people? I gave the regional grouping a commitment, I think it's 18 months ago, Mr. Lashley, that I will take night and make day right across this region to ensure that this program is replicated just as how you see Kentucky Fried as a franchise.
As we continue to talk about sustainability and the need for funding, we can see that there are individuals who are extremely inspired by and passionate about the results of the Roving Caregivers programs. But we now have to concern ourselves about funding and sustainability. And so back to our panel, lady and gentlemen, what are some of the models that we are looking at? What are some of the options that clearly lay in front of us?
Before we get to the models,
yes,
you know, reflecting on Mr. Degan's statement,
yes,
it has been said that it takes a village to raise a child. Mm-hmm. And I think a fundamental point that needs to be made is that early childhood provision, unlike other sectors in education, has not traditionally been seen as a responsibility of the state.
Yes.
Particularly the 0 to 3 range. And as I said earlier in one of the earlier segments, it really is foundational for educational success later in life. In that context, I think we need to understand that the challenge in universalizing early childhood provision is to ensure that everybody plays their role in making this possible. It is not a clear-cut niche like primary education or secondary education where it is either state provision or private schools. In this arena, it is civil society, it is the community, it is the parents, it is the government, it is the private sector. So we have a unique opportunity here to form a coalition of partners that can ensure that in the Caribbean village lays that educational foundation.
Yes, it also gives us a tremendous opportunity to create a focus on our children.
Exactly.
And we're better.
Yeah. We're asking about the funding and two issues. One of the things we've got to be clear on, we have something on the ground now.
Yes,
so
that works
very
well.
And works very well, and is cost effective. So one of the first things that we got to do is to make sure that going forward, we sustain all of these programs and ensure that they can continue. So any type of funding that we're putting in, our first priority has to be to ensure that the all 6 areas, but particularly the 4 I think we're focusing on in this grouping, the St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Dominica, that those programs are funded and that the process is there beyond 2011. And so I think there is what I would call a short, a medium term, and a longer term picture. And as you look going forward, taking into consideration private sector and public sector partnerships, the models that you can find for funding as per, I think we talked about the possibility of a regional fund that could provide some opportunities for private sector participation. But the key for the private sector is going to be how do we know that our money is going to be well spent? And one of the things we have to do is to show with this model, it works, we can deliver. Now let's make sure that we have the ability, maybe on individual projects, you may find some of the funding maybe, you know, projectized. You know, it may be a specific area that somebody wants to focus on. How do you fit this into the process going forward?
I think the role of the private sector is clear. And as Mr. Degans did in his presentation, he was passionate. There's a lot of passion in the private sector. I think, as I said earlier, this is an issue that has to be put on the table. I do not think that there are many persons in the private sector who understand, first of all, the vulnerability of this group.
Yes. And
secondly, the impact that this program can and has had in the past. And as Dr. Jules pointed out, it's dead cheap, really, in the context of other contributions. So that's the first thing we need to do, is to increase the awareness within the private sector of the critical importance of that intervention.
Yes.
As far as funding is concerned, as I've indicated earlier, the private sector, corporations are writing checks every day. And I'm sure that they could be very easily persuaded of the need to put this particular program at the top of the list of priorities.
What do you think would what would it take to get that to happen, you think?
I think it's really important. I can't overemphasize how